I found out the kind of man my father-in-law really was while I was standing at his wife's funeral, listening to her sister whisper words I was never supposed to hear. "I hope you know what Martin kept from her," she said. "What he kept from all of you." And in that one cold breath, I understood why he had spent 22 years controlling my husband. Why he had put his own name on something that belonged to me. And why, out of everyone in that family, I was the one person he never planned for. My name is Linda. I was 46 years old. I had a garden I kept with my own hands, 2 boys in high school, and 18 years of a marriage I believed was built between equals. I review contracts for a living. I notice when numbers don't add up. But there was one paragraph buried on page 11 of 14 that I missed. One paragraph that gave another man legal rights to my home, my finances, and 18 years of my life. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. His name was Martin. My father-in-law. And by the time he realized what I'd found, it was already too late for him to stop me. Margaret, my husband Thomas's mother, died in November of a stroke. We were never close. I always read her as guarded, careful in a way I respected without questioning. I thought that was simply who she was. I didn't understand until much later that Margaret wasn't reserved. Margaret was afraid. At the funeral, her younger sister Eleanor pulled me aside near the coat rack. She was 71, and her voice was too flat to be grief. "I hope you know what Martin kept from her," she said. "What he kept from all of you." Before I could ask what she meant, Thomas appeared. He put his hand on Eleanor's shoulder, gentle on the surface, and steered her toward the refreshment table. Then he caught my eye over her shoulder. His expression wasn't sad. It was a warning. I've replayed that look 1,000 times since. Because at a funeral, what exactly does a husband need to warn his wife about? I didn't ask him in the car. I smiled at the right people, said the right things to the right relatives, and drove home beside my husband in complete silence about the one thing that actually mattered. I had learned a long time ago that the most useful thing you can do with a warning is not react to it. You receive it. You record it. And then, quietly, you find out exactly what it was for. I had no idea yet how far back this went, or how close to home it already was. Before I go on, have you ever trusted someone completely, only to find out later they'd been managing you the whole time? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. Then let it breathe. Hold the pause before continuing. 2 weeks after the funeral, I found a folder. Thomas had left his briefcase open on the kitchen counter, something he never did. Tucked beneath a stack of site drawings was a manila folder with my name written on the tab. Not Thomas's handwriting. Martin's. I stood there in my kitchen with my heart going still in that strange way it does right before something changes for good. The boys were at football practice. The house was quiet enough that I could hear the refrigerator humming. I took a photograph of the folder exactly where it sat. Then I closed the briefcase, went upstairs, and started dinner like nothing had happened. I did not open it that night. I needed to understand why my name was on something Martin had placed in my husband's briefcase before I let either of them know I'd seen it. Because if Martin had gone to that trouble, there was a reason. And the reason was the thing I needed to find first. People don't understand the stillness that comes over a woman the moment she realizes she's being managed. It isn't shock. It isn't even anger yet. It's something closer to precision. Everything unnecessary falls away, and suddenly you can see exactly what's in front of you. That was what happened to me in that kitchen. I opened the Notes app on my work phone, a phone Thomas had never touched, and I started keeping a record. Every closed door call he took from the hallway. Every weekend he drove out alone to Martin's development site. Every time Martin came for Sunday dinner and said something that landed just slightly wrong, a comment about our mortgage, a question about the ownership structure at my firm, a passing mention of a clause in an agreement I had never been shown. I noted all of it. I did not react to any of it. Then I picked up the phone and called Eleanor, the one woman in this family who had never been afraid to say the quiet part out loud. We met for coffee on a Thursday morning, in a small town exactly between our two cities, far enough from family that no one would ask questions. Eleanor was sharp as cut glass, and I could tell within the first 5 minutes that she had been waiting years for someone to finally ask. She told me that when Thomas and I bought our first house 12 years earlier, Martin had quietly placed himself as a secondary guarantor on our mortgage. We had never been told. What that meant, legally, was that Martin held real financial leverage over our home. Whether Thomas had known and hidden it from me, or whether Martin had hidden it from both of us, was a question I still couldn't answer. Not yet. Eleanor said Margaret had found out 3 years before she died. That she'd confronted Martin directly. That Martin told her it was protection, that he was only making sure his son was taken care of. She never told Thomas, Eleanor said quietly, stirring a coffee she wasn't drinking. She was too afraid of what Martin would do. Afraid of what Martin would do. I drove home with that phrase circling in my chest. A woman who knew the truth and chose silence because silence felt safer than the alternative. I understood her completely. But I had already decided I was going to choose a very different kind of silence. The kind that builds something instead of hiding from it. What I found next would tell me exactly how far Martin had gone and exactly how long he thought he could get away with it. I pulled our mortgage documents from the filing cabinet I had always managed myself. I read every line, every clause, every footnote, the kind most people skim past on the way to the signature page. The guarantor clause was there. One paragraph. Standard font. Buried on page 11 of 14. I had signed those documents 18 years ago, in a room full of excitement and trust, certain I had read everything that mattered. I had missed one paragraph. And Martin had known I would. I made an appointment with the property solicitor without telling Thomas. I brought every document I owned. I asked every question I could think to ask. She confirmed everything Eleanor had described. Martin's position gave him legal standing to be notified of and in certain circumstances to intervene in decisions about my own home. But she told me something else, too. It could be undone. Refinancing. A formal written release from Martin. Thomas's full cooperation or, if it came to that, his absence from the process entirely. I thanked her. I paid the consultation fee in cash, so there would be no statement for anyone to find. Then I went home and did exactly what I had been doing all along. Watching. Recording. Saying nothing. Because the moment Martin learned I knew, every advantage I'd built would disappear. And I wasn't ready to lose it yet. I want to be precise about what happened next, because I think it matters more than anything else in this story. I did not rage. I did not stage a scene at the Sunday dinner table. I did not cry to Thomas and beg him to choose between his father and me. Those are the moves of a woman who still needs something from the people who wronged her. I didn't need anything from them anymore. Over the next 6 weeks, I quietly built the conditions for my own freedom. I consulted a family law solicitor. I opened accounts in my name alone. I documented everything: Eleanor's account, the mortgage clause, the full timeline of every strange comment Martin had made at every Sunday dinner for years, and had it all witnessed and notarized. Then I sat Thomas down on a Sunday afternoon while the boys were at practice. I placed the folder on the table between us. The one with my name on the tab, in Martin's handwriting. Beside it, I laid the mortgage documents, open to page 11. I need to know whether you knew, I said. He looked at the documents for a long time. Then he looked at me. And I had my answer. What he told me next would change the next 20 years of our marriage, and I needed every ounce of the discipline I'd been building for 6 weeks to hear it without flinching. Thomas had known for 4 years. Martin had told him during a refinance on a development property they handled together. Thomas said nothing to me because Martin called it protection, and Thomas, shaped by that word his entire life, let himself believe it. Or told himself he did. He cried. He apologized. He said he never thought it would matter. I told him it mattered to me. 4 years. I want you to sit with that number for a second the way I had to. 4 years of dinners in that house. 4 years of raising our sons under that roof. 4 years of believing I owned something that quietly had another man's name attached to it, without my knowledge and without my consent. I told him everything I had already done. The solicitor. The accounts. The notarized documentation. Every option already mapped out, weeks before this conversation even happened. I told him I was willing to stay. But only on terms I set. The guarantor clause would be removed. Martin would have no financial standing in our life, in any form, ever again. If Thomas wanted a relationship with his father, that was his choice to make. But Martin would not be in our home, at our table, or anywhere near our finances again. I gave him 1 week to decide. What would you have done in my position after finding out your husband knew for 4 years and said nothing? I'd really love to know. Drop it in the comments below. Thomas chose us. He sent his father a letter, not an email, a letter, the kind that takes longer to write because you can't take it back. I didn't write it, but I read it before it went out. It was the most honest I had ever heard Thomas be with his own father. It named exactly what Martin had done. It named the consequence. Martin called me once, after he received it. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message about family loyalty and ingratitude, about how I had never appreciated everything he'd done for us. I saved it. I labeled the file with the date. If you enjoy stories about betrayal, resilience, and justice, subscribe now because the biggest twist in this story is still ahead. The guarantor clause was removed 6 months later. We refinanced on our own terms, with our own lender, with no name on those documents I hadn't put there myself. Eleanor came to dinner the following spring. We sat together in the garden I keep with my own hands, and she told me Margaret would have liked me. I think about that sometimes. About Margaret, who found out and went quiet. Who spent 3 years knowing and saying nothing, because she was afraid of what would happen if she spoke. I understand her silence. I just chose a different kind. Martin never apologized. But he also never called again. Did you see this twist coming, that the danger in this story was never my husband, it was always his father? Let me know in the comments. That silence was the only apology that ever meant anything. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? Because if you have, I already know exactly who you are. And I see you. If you've ever been underestimated and found a way to rise above it anyway, subscribe for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next one.